Okay, hello everyone. I'm Hari Viswanathan, and today I'm going to talk about photographing bears in Los Alamos, and this is for the 2020 virtual bear festival that PEEC is holding. And I'd like to thank my son and my wife and my parents who've been involved in this project over the years. And so for us, wildlife photography has been a hobby. We've been on safari all over the world and we photograph wildlife. And on the Pajarito Plateau, it's pretty straightforward to be able to photograph things like birds in particular seasons. But even though I grew up in Los Alamos, mammals are pretty hit or miss. And so, when you look at the guides, I'd often see that you could see large mammals in Los Alamos, but even though I grew up here in high school and as a kid, I hardly ever saw anything. And so one of the questions is, can you actually see these mammals, and particularly bears? So something that my mom did quite a while ago is she saw that the National Wildlife Federation actually figured out what is good in a to do for your backyard to set it up where you don't use up too much water, you have native plants, with the goal being to help out wildlife but not making them a nuisance. And so, natural foods, water source, cover, places to raise young, these are all fine. The things, as we'll go into later, are things like trash or bird feeders or even non-native fruit trees that can actually result in bears becoming a nuisance, as some are doing even today in town. And so back in 1997, my mom actually, for a complete different reason, wanted to have a pond on her backyard, which borders a canyon. And the idea here was lotus, which is a big deal for people from India. It's a kind of a plant that we all really like, and it turns out you can grow them here no problem if you have a water garden and if you have morning sun. And so we built this pond, and it was clear sometimes in the morning it would be a little bit messed up because some animals may have played around, but I just assumed it was probably raccoons or something like that. But it was no big deal. In fact, we even had fish for many years in the pond, kind of showing that you know and they were fine. And it also attracted an amazing set of birds that we photographed over the years, but I pretty much did not see any of the large mammals visiting for a very long time. But then we, as things progressed, people started using critter cams to sort of see what came into people's backyards. And so what you see in the top left, and I say white flash critter cam up there because it turns out that most of the activity happens at night. And if you want to actually get color photos at night, you need to be white flash. And it's a big difference because even though white flash cams are actually fairly cheap, you can get one of the really good ones for about $160. Most critter cams are actually for hunters, and they don't want what they're hunting to kind of know that they're surveilling the place. And so they use infrared, and those might actually be more expensive cameras, and they'll give you black and white at night. And the way a critter cam works is they have a motion and heat sensor built in. And so the idea would be, it's so windy around here that it would be taking pictures all the time if it just looked for motion. And, if it just looked for heat, as the day heats up, it's just going to take pictures. But the combination of the two is actually really reliable. And you just put in a memory card and it just is there 24/7. And if you have an area in your yard, in this case, the pond, you actually end up seeing what visits. And this is where we ended up seeing bears, as I'll show. And when I started seeing the kind of amazing visits we were getting, I have nice camera gear too. So I figured out how to hook up my DSLR camera to a motion heat sensor to, get really professional looking shots. And so the picture on the right is sort of once we got pretty serious, saying, well, the bear or bobcat or whatever it is, it comes in from different angles. And so and the visits are not that common. So you want to make sure you capture a decent thing because it's not like they're just coming in every day, which is a good thing. And so people are always curious, what has been our experience with bears, because, there are sad stories around town where, they get into the trash or they get into someone's garage and, sometimes they have to be taken away and even euthanized. And so, first of all, we hardly even saw bears until we put in the critter cams. And then they made occasional visits kind of in the summer and fall. And from reading up on it and even talking to game and fish around here, water sources just don't make them a nuisance, because there's water sources like, just think of the sprinklers and all the different water sources that are all over the place, even though we're in the high desert. And so they just kind of stop by. And if you'll see what they do to the ponds, they don't damage it at all. When you go and look at the pond the next day, you can't even tell a bear's been there, because they only damage stuff when they need to get to food. But if you do, have a trash can that has food in it, or even bird seed or hummingbird feeders, then a bear can actually become a real problem. And, the fed bear, dead bear, which I think they'll be talking about quite a bit in the festival. And so now kind of getting to some of the different things we saw. I mean, this one was kind of a cute shot where this bear, really did kind of like in the Jungle Book of Walt Disney a long time ago, sticking the butt up and just sitting there and drinking. And this is just a critter cam photo. And the critter cam, here the bear literally just looked right at the camera, and it was sort of, these first two are rare daytime visits. Most of them are at night. And now this is a DSLR picture. You can see it's a lot sharper, and you get a lot, this happened to be at sunrise too. And it turns out bears actually do like taking baths. And this one, came in and really sloshed around, and Warbler Pond is sort of like the perfect bathtub. And then this year, we've been doing this probably, I think, for the last 8-9 years, and we'd never seen bear cubs ever come to the pond. I just assumed that mother bears are pretty careful with their cubs. This one turned out to be, this bear cub ended up coming all over Barranca Mesa, and eventually this mother bear broke into someone had just left their garage door open, and they left their trash in there, and the mama bear went in there. And so then Game and Fish actually had to send out like 7 vehicles, and they did an amazing job, capturing them all and relocating them to the Gila. But this is, again, the county is working hard to be able to provide bear-proof trash cans. And if people would all do that, I think we wouldn't result in that kind of scenario. But for us, it was always just a very quick visit. They came in and they took a drink, and, this is a critter cam shot. And once we knew the critter cam was capturing 3 cubs and a mama bear, I set up the DSLR, and got a lot of really neat, cute shots of the cubs and the mama bear coming in. And you can see the plateau in the canyon in the background with the buttercups that are blooming. And so, I was really pleased with this. And, another bear that comes almost maybe about every 2 or 3 weeks, so not very common this summer. Most people think this is probably the father bear, and he's enormous. And so when you look at the picture, it almost looks like, did you Photoshop that bear in? Because he just looks so big, but that's just how big he is. And so people are kind of curious about what are the trends of bears and the critters in general that visit the pond. And so, definitely bears are visiting in the wet season and mostly at night, but sometimes during the day. And, the smaller animals like bobcats and raccoons and things like that, they're almost there every day. And so it's the bigger mammals that are rare. And, it's mostly dawn, night, and dusk. And definitely the most rare thing that visits the ponds is the cougar, mountain lion. And that might be once or twice a year. But deer are there almost all the time. And so if you were to really say, when's the most likely time you're going to see bears in our neighborhood, it's actually time to garbage day. And so it's because they're getting into the trash of the people who don't have the bear-proof trash cans, or people who put out the trash the previous night, and they happen to stop by our pond for a drink. Another time that you see them more often is when the fruit trees are ripe. But I think that's a lot less problematic than trash or bird seed. Where, you know, bird seed, the mama bear and the 3 cubs, when they captured them, they found out that she was eating bird seed all the time from somebody's house, and that's probably what made her somewhat dependent. And so again, something that can easily be avoided if you just bring the feeders in at night. And so this is just an example of different animals that have visited at different times, but they were all in those spots. And so you see there's actually quite a bit of diversity of wildlife that come on the Pajarito Plateau. We live in a pretty amazing place, and bears and cougars are definitely the two biggest. And you can look at more of these photos at harisphotos.com if you want. And so thanks for this short clip, and I hope you enjoy the virtual Bear Festival, and you can always get in touch if you have questions about setting up these critter cams or the wildlife. Thanks. Bye.